Hello and welcome. My name is Father William Maestri, and this is Overfed and Undernourished. A recent conversation I had got me to thinking about several things that I think are current and no doubt widely discussed in our society today. I had the opportunity to meet two people that I had come to know. One is an architect and the other is a school teacher, an elementary school teacher whose specialty is in mathematics. And we went over to the architect's house, and he builds residential homes. And we went into his house, and sprawled out on his workplace were the plans for the house that he's working on, along with some sketches and in fact a drawing that had a picture of the completed house that he was in the process of building. He's also a contractor. He's very hands-on. And he does very, very fine work and is very committed to what he does. And as he was explaining the house and what he was doing and what architects do, because I was interested in that, I asked him, I said, have you ever started building a house from the second floor, then go to the third, the fourth, and the fifth? And he looked at me strangely, and he said, no. He said, I usually build houses beginning with the slab foundation and then build up, because no matter how beautiful the house is, if it doesn't have a good foundation, big problems are in store. I said, so you have to start with the foundation. He said, foundation is that upon which the most beautiful house rests. And that's crucial to the whole architectural process. And the lady who was there, I had taught her several years ago in school, and she's now an elementary school teacher again in mathematics. She teaches third and fourth grade. And I said to her, I said, Evelyn, I said, when you're teaching third and fourth grade children math, when do you begin teaching about calculus and trigonometry? And she kind of drew back a bit and she said, well, I don't teach trigonometry and calculus in the third and fourth grade. I said, well, why not? And she said, well, that's obvious. The children don't have the basics, and they don't have the conceptual tools and wiring to be able to deal with that. She said, I could take the smartest child that I have, and that child would not be able to grasp what's involved in calculus and trigonometry, all things being equal. So I said, oh, so the foundation and the basics are important. And they both kind of nodded, like, gee, that's pretty obvious. And of course it's obvious. Foundations and basics are very important. No matter how grand the building, it's the foundation and the basics that are essential, no matter how beautiful the edifice may be on a particular house or a particular project that one is working on. And I got to thinking, we have a beautiful structure to our American society and its government. It's the United States Constitution. It's the envy of the world, copied by many, carried out by few. And it's the longest enduring constitutional republic in the history of humankind, the Constitution of the United States and the republic for which it stands, and has served us well. And I think in recent months, and certainly in recent times, we have seen the foundation and the basics of our republic and the constitutional development of our government and of our society and of our culture, and culture is crucial, really be called into question, if not downright attacked and rejected. And I'm talking specifically about religion, I'm talking about family, and I'm talking about the police. All three institutions are the foundation and basics of a rightly ordered society, a just and peaceable society, a free society of people who rule themselves. If we start off with the idea of religion, America is grounded, and it has been even before the Constitution and before the Revolution and the rejection of rule by England. It was founded in a Judeo-Christian tradition, founded on biblical principles and by Christian teachings and Christian ideals. And that foundation, respect for all human life, the dignity of the human person, the importance of liberty, the rule of law, individual natural rights that are given by God to the individual, and on it goes. All of those are grounded in the Judeo-Christian heritage that grounded and formed the foundation, the moral foundation of our way of life, of the American story. And much of the advances that have taken place, and not simply technological and economic and political, but also in terms of the recognition and respect for the dignity of all human life, the dignity of the human person, the importance of rights and the rule of law, trace their grounding and their origin back into Judeo-Christian principles. And these are severely being called into question. The idea that we are a nation blessed by God, guided by divine providence for a special mission and a special purpose, fills volumes and volumes of the writings and thinking of the founders, and even in pre-constitutional times, pre-revolutionary times, in the sermons that were delivered, in the way in which people conducted themselves. Religion and faith is a fundamental of the American story, and that has severely been called into question. Just recently, we have seen an increased attack on churches, on religious statues that have taken place. We've gone from attacking Confederate monuments and statues to even attacking Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson, Douglas, Frederick Douglass, and others. And now we have moved to the real target. The real target is religion. Because you see, religion says to us, the Judeo-Christian ethic says to us, that there is a supreme being, a creator of heaven and earth, to whom we are ultimately answerable, and whose will we know, and through God's grace we are able to follow. And we should have a society and laws that reflect that, because God wants what is best for us, not only individually, but as we live together in freedom and in justice and in peace. That's throughout the Bible and throughout Christian teaching. And that has been called into serious question because we don't want to acknowledge that there is a supreme being above and beyond what goes on in the affairs of human beings here on earth. Dostoevsky, the great Russian writer, said that if God is dead, all things are permitted. And that's exactly the project. Get rid of God, and then the only thing left is the naked human will, which becomes even worse when it's collectivized, joining together by others who simply express nothing but raw will, raw emotion, raw desire and passion. And we see that. We see that running loose in our society today. Such an approach, forget God, forget anything about God's law and God's will, and simply let individuals be guided by their own will, their own passions, their own desires, their own interest. It becomes a very dangerous place for the weak and the poor and the vulnerable, the sick, and for all of those who would be at the mercy, if there be any, of those who control absolute power. It's the world of Friedrich Nietzsche. God is dead, and all we have left is the will to power. And so now we see the step up and increase in attacks on places of worship where we acknowledge a supreme being, an ultimate authority to whom we are responsible and will be answerable. That's number one. That's the first plank, is the plank of the Judeo-Christian ethic. Secondly is family. Some of the groups that are advocating for the remaking of America, the tearing down of our institutions and the relationships and structures within society, one of their chief targets is that of the nuclear family. The nuclear family is dismissed as outdated, traditional, along with, of course, marriage between one man and one woman, a husband and a wife, children within that family, a nuclear family that is looked upon as oppressive, patriarchal. You're familiar with the whole list of complaints lodged against the nuclear family, and yet modern research and historical evidence indicates that there is no better social arrangement in which to raise children to have a good life, a good human flourishing life, than within the nuclear family of a stable environment of the love between a husband and a wife, and the example that takes place within the home. That is crucial. So much of our social ills, drugs, gangs, violence, crime, school dropouts, teenage pregnancies, on and on it goes, all of the pathologies. We can go back to the idea of the breakdown of the nuclear family. And that is the goal, to break down the nuclear family so then individuals become dependent upon either the state, become a ward of the state in general, or of the particular group that is in power and in control. But the nuclear family itself has that little platoon of virtue where the individual learns how to be socialized, how to participate in the wider community. In other words, to develop a civic self, to develop a self that is able to participate in the goings and the comings of a society in a responsible, law-abiding way. That has to be eliminated. And we see the attacks on the nuclear family. And that, again, is one of the foundational elements, the strengthening of the nuclear family. What we have seen in recent decades is, in fact, just the opposite, the weakening of the family. And that has not served us well. And the third and final plank that I would like to discuss with you is that of the police. And we hear this talk about defunding the police. Well, defunding the police is no fun, because the problem is who then, they are the first line of civic order. And without order, you don't have justice, you don't have freedom, and you don't have peace if you don't have order. And the police are the first line. They are that blue line that assures there is some degree of civility and procedure within a society so that grievances can be addressed, people can be safe and secure in their home and in their person, and allows us to live the kind of life that allows human flourishing and human development. But the police are under severe attack across the board. Defunding the police, reimagining the police, whatever that means. The idea of substituting social workers and therapists for police. Serious people really cannot really engage in that kind of thought. One can only imagine, and we don't even need to imagine it. We see it in front of us. In our large cities, look at New York. Crime has skyrocketed. Murders and shootings, violence has escalated as police have become more and more handicapped, demoralized, and afraid to carry out their normal functions as police because of the polluted environment that has been stirred up against law enforcement. Law without enforcement makes no sense. You have to have an enforcement mechanism, and each and every day, policemen go out to protect and to serve and put themselves front and center between criminals and anarchy and citizens who wish to carry on a normal, good human life. Just this past weekend, today's the 14th of July 2020, but just this past weekend, a 1-year-old child in a stroller in Brooklyn, New York, was shot to death by a stray bullet. That child is dead. You've seen the interview with the father and the grandmother. It's heart-wrenching. And yet, what we have done is cut police, cut their salaries and their resources, and we have demeaned the police and respect for law. That has severe consequences for our society. That's where the chaos comes in. And that's where law is replaced by lawlessness, in which no one is really safe and secure. Talk about the 99% and the 1%. The 1% will have their private security, will have police protection, will be in gated communities, and all of those kinds of things. Whereas the 99% will not, especially the most disadvantaged will not. In fact, if you take surveys, the highest crime rate areas want more police, not less police. It's very fine to talk about defunding. It sounds very chic and avant-garde and all of this kind of stuff. The problem is lives are being lost, businesses are being destroyed, families are being hurt severely, businesses are being destroyed and going under, jobs are being lost. All of that in the name of let's defund the police. Now, please notice, I have here one of my sophisticated visual aids, which you probably can't see, but take my word for it, if we trust anybody anymore. Here is a needle and a thread. Needle and a thread. Religion, family, police. Religion, family, and police. This is the needle and the thread. All of those are foundational elements of a civil society. That is what is being pulled now. The needle of anarchy, the needle of attacking the very foundations of a civil, virtuous society. That is pulling along the needle of anarchy in the name of remaking, reimagining our society and this republic that has served us and has been imitated around the world throughout history. That is being pulled through. And what is so disheartening, I don't want to say disheartening, it should really energize us. What is so disappointing is that many of our so-called leaders, those who have huge public followings, platforms, institutional positions of leadership, that can really address these in a serious way and let adults once again entertain the conversation. They have grown silent and they have moved away from this very, very crucial issue that we are facing at this particular moment. And I'm talking about people in government, politics, economics, business, entertainment, sports, and religion. Those in religion should be at the forefront of speaking on behalf of life, on behalf of order and freedom and justice and peace. True justice, so that a true peace can come about. That is a social justice issue. Those are concerns that need to be to the forefront. But it is as if Adult voices have grown silent, and the voices that are speaking up sound like echo chambers of what the street is saying, of what those with the loudest voices are screaming and yelling and inflaming others about. Leadership is not about echoing. Leadership is about offering a vision for a better organization, a better development. That's what leadership is. Leadership is about speaking to what Lincoln said are our final angels. In thinking about this, and to kind of bring this to a close, I went back and looked at a magnificent poem by the Irish poet William Butler Yeats, 19th century poet, in his masterpiece called The Second Coming. And I'd like to share with you the opening stanza of this magnificent poem. If you have a chance, please read it. It's worth it. Very simply, he writes, "Turning and turning in the widening gray, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center does not hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." That's exactly what we have today. These are very sobering words. The best lack all conviction. Lack conviction. Our leaders, people of conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. This is what we have today because we followed the most intense. We believe that the wheel that squeaks the loudest gets the oil. But we also remember it's the first one replaced.